Today, we're going over the most hated commanders of all of 2024.
I'm Mia, and I love cool accessories.
I'm BZ, and I like to spice up my appearance every once in a while. And that's great because we're sponsored by Holtzkern. Holtzkern is a watch and jewelry brand that anyone can enjoy. And with so many unique products, there's something for everyone.
All of their products are made from natural and sustainable materials like wood, stone, pearls, and leaves. Holtzkern values quality over quantity, so each product maintains a high attention to detail, but this means they also sell out quickly. So, if you see a design that speaks to you, you've got to go for it.
I am not usually a fashionable person, but honestly, these sunglasses are awesome, and I can't wait to start bringing them with me on vacation.
I also love my watch and earrings. They're amazing, and I can actually wear them anywhere I go.
They also offer free express shipping worldwide that arrives in 2 to 5 business days, and if you place an order before December 19th, it'll arrive by Christmas.
If you're looking to get a gift for anyone, Holtzkern can match their personal style. Thank you to Holtzkern for sponsoring this video. Click our link in the description and use our code NERDS at checkout to save 15% on your holiday gifts site-wide for a limited time only.
We're also sponsored by Card Kingdom. Now, there's a lot of things to like about Card Kingdom, but one of my favorites is that they give free shipping on orders $50 or more. So while other redacted websites are going to nickel and dime you all the way up until you try to spend $50 on the website, and then you have to pay $50 for shipping, Card Kingdom lets you just crunch all that, pay $50 for the cards you actually want, and $0 for shipping.
They're also having a big sale, but it ends tomorrow, Wednesday, night at midnight Pacific. The code is WINTERSAVE, and it can get you 10% off sealed, supplies, and graded magic, which is a large portion, especially if you're looking for a special box or precons.
Yeah, use the link in the description to let them know that we sent you. And we are sponsored by Dragon Shield because they have the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS,
you can save 5% of the money that you worked hard on to spend on Magic card accessories.
There are so many things there. There are deck boxes, there are sleeves, there are customized sleeves that you can make yourself, so you should go there, tell them we sent you, because they do actually have the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves?
Yes, correct.
Boxfield?
Somewhere, not here.
Why?
Because later, we are also sponsored by us and you. Thank you. We have a Patreon. And if you want to support us, you can see content never before seen anywhere else.
Ever. So this is one of my favorite videos of the year because we're reaching out to the community, to you guys, to see what are the commanders that came out in 2024 that people hated the most. It's just a fun end of year wrap up. There's not really any more rules than that. It's just the more hatred a commander got, the more we're going to talk about it.
Honestly, we have seen so many of these in action. We can completely agree some of the salt related to a bunch of them, especially the ones closer to the top of the list. But first, we have some dishonorable mentions. These are the ones that didn't quite cut the salt list of the most hated, but they were still mentioned quite a lot, and I think it's important that we talk about it. One of them being Flubs the Fool. This is a teamer little frog who's adorable, but it really encourages a lot of stormy turns because if you don't have cards in your hand, it'll let you draw stuff when you cast spells or play lands.
Yeah, definitely sort of like a feast or famine card. I can understand that turns with Flubs, if they go well, they take a very long time. Also, the Necrobloom, it has some like combos with dredging, with like the Get Rog monster, and of course, Field of the Dead is a good Magic card. Even if you slap it on a 4-mana 2/3 or whatever the power toughness is, it can be pretty annoying. It's definitely a value engine. And one thing to mention with these cards and the rest of the cards on our list, I am not saying anything negative about people who play them. I don't care if you play them, actually. I'm gonna sit down and play against whatever. But these are just the commanders that people at large tend to think are a little bit annoying. But, you know, you play what makes you happy.
Absolutely, especially when there are different power levels. There are room for all these commanders, but these are the ones that people were most irked by in 2024. This is going to start at number 10. This is Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. 1 blue, red, black for a 2/5 with Menace. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. I feel like not only was this one of the most hated commanders of the year, this was also one of the most anticipated commanders of the year. There were courts that spiked way up once this card was released, and everyone was really excited to put this in their decks. As you mentioned with Flubs the Fool, this is very feast or famine. If you can connect, you get so many triggers, so much value, but if you can't connect or Obeka keeps getting removed, I feel like this deck does a lot of nothing or very little for the prices you're actually playing for your spells.
Yeah, our friend Venjuwagon made a really good point about this card. This sort of like upkeeps deck was sort of in the background as like a Paradox Haze secret commander thing that you could try to do, and it was pretty terrible. But hey, sometimes when it came together, your deck actually did something. This took all of that and tied it up in a bow with like quote unquote the perfect commander. And I think for a lot of people, it actually kind of ruined the archetype because it made it too easy. And so I think a lot of people built this deck with the excitement of getting to put this together, and Elbeka just ended up being very strong for this deck. It's not a broken card, but it definitely is one of the strongest upkeep cards. So people were like a little bit let down. It doesn't feel as jank anymore. And then other people, they see that you get 17 upkeep triggers, and it's like, okay, I don't want to sit through this.
Honestly, I feel like the biggest reason for a lot of the hatred is because of that upkeep trigger. Things just take so long. People want snappy turns, especially if you're not winning on upkeep, and it's just a lot of value that people have to chug through before they get to their turn, and there's no way to tell if you're going to end the game or it's going to be another 10 upkeeps in your single upkeep phase.
Yeah, sometimes when you make a thing too good, it actually just doesn't satisfy people as much as it could have. Number 9, I was expecting something along these lines. I was expecting at least one Eldrazi on here. Number 9 is Ulalek, Fused Atrocity, colorless or a white, colorless or a blue, colorless or a black, colorless or a red, colorless or a green for a 2/5 devoid. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay colorless. If you do, copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You can choose new targets for the copies. Play an Eldrazi, it has a cast trigger, activate Ulalek, get a second cast trigger and a second version of that Eldrazi.
There are little niche combos with this that can go infinite if you bring things in and like flicker it. But overall, this is a very confusing ability, and I feel like a lot of times players are frustrated because it is a very confusing ability that other people have trouble resolving it, or it just takes a really long time because there are so many triggered abilities on the stack.
Yeah, I just think Eldrazi in general are not something people enjoy. As we get more and more Eldrazi, I think they can encompass a more wide range of play experiences. I don't think most of the Eldrazi that exist now are that miserable to play against, but there are still ones with Annihilator running around, like the original Titans. I think our boy, what's that guy's name? I can never remember his name, but I love him so much.
Hideous Taskmaster?
I'm so sorry, Hideous Taskmaster. I can't remember your name, but yeah, that's got Annihilator. So there's definitely some like big, powerful things where you just get run over by this deck. Run over by 2 Hideous Taskmasters on turn 7, and you feel like you can't win.
I feel like this was a very cool way to try and take Eldrazi, because Eldrazi are known for Annihilator for the most part and just being big and punchy. And then if you can get to that big mana spell, then you get a lot of value, whether that's with a Kozilek to counter stuff by pitching things from your hand. But this is a lower costed Eldrazi. It gives you all the colors of the mana colors, and it lets you do things kind of in little increments rather than having to pay 12 mana and then you get your value. So I liked the way that this was going, but I think it was executed in a way that made it a bit more confusing for Eldrazi, when a lot of them just want you to ramp and punch.
Some people were annoyed that it gave access to the entire Wooburg color pie, because Eldrazi are typically colorless, and that means you can't play, 50% of them, most of the smaller ones. So this definitely opened up the deck. It can do a little bit more now. I understand. I think Ulalek's cool, but Eldrazi, take it with a grain of salt. I don't want to play 10 games in a row against Eldrazi.
I get what you guys are saying, and Eldrazi, sometimes they're just really hard to play against. Number 8 is Igra, Eater of All. 3 green black for a 6/6 with Ward, Sacrifice of Food. Other creatures are food in addition to their other types, and you can sack them for what a usual food would be. Whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put 2 counters on Igra. This is, I think, can be very oppressive. I completely understand why this is in the most hated, turning all of the creatures into artifacts. If you have a big Vandal Blast, not like literally from Igra's deck, but if you have a big artifact-based board wipe, for instance, and then just making Igra gigantic, and then just having something like a Marionette Apprentice or Marionette Master in your deck, getting all of those triggers and then swinging in for this gigantic commander, plus the ward on it can be pretty spicy.
Yeah, the ward's annoying. It says basically sacrifice a creature, so it's not impossible to pay, but that does make Igra bigger, and then if you can protect it, you still get the counters on it. And I think that this card creates a lot of scenarios where you fire off a Bane of Progress or a Fade into History or some other, board wipe for artifacts, and now you've got an unblockable 50/50 that deals commander damage because there's no other creatures to oppose it. That, I think, can really take the wind out of your sails. I have not played against Igra, but I can imagine that play pattern often enough that even if you just go Igra turn 5, Bane of Progress turn 6, you're killing somebody.
I feel like Igra, you can get turn 3 or 4 because you're in green-black. You can ramp into it really, really fast. And things like Druid of Purification or Pick Your Poison are now applying to creatures too. So not only can Druid of Purification snipe the best enchantments or artifacts on the field, it can now snipe the best creatures with Igra too.
And then all of these things, like those 2 cards, are 3-for-1s, even if you're not getting the best foods off the field, Eager gets plus 12, right? 3, 2, 4, 6. Well, it becomes a 12-12 and you're smashing for a bunch. So Eager is just like a big, A plus B combo almost, where people can get eliminated. So I do understand. I have not played against Egra, but I think it's not that hard to imagine. Like I said,
I think it can be very stifling. The next one is also very stifling. It's number 7. It's Maha. It's Feather's Knight. 3 black for a 6/5 flying trample ward. Discard a card. Creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. Now there are so many effects that give things -1/-1, which can wipe your opponent's side incredibly easily.
this is another 5-mana commander from Bloomborough with Ward that sets up all of your opponent's creatures to be easily one-sidedly board wiped. That's really close to what Egra does. I think the trample on this card is disrespectful because it also means there's just no blocking it ever. Even if you gang block it, with 2 or 3 things, you still take damage because of the trample and the 1 toughness interaction. It's so funny. I think Ward discard card is more annoying than Sacrifice of Food on Egra, even if this doesn't get a power boost. You've got things like Karavek, even a Toxic Deluge or a Nausea, just absolutely wrecking them, and that's just a fraction of your mana, so you can just beat in the air and continue your mono black plans with your Cabal Coffers and whatnot.
Yeah, the 4 strikes and you're out with this is brutal. The fact that everything will have base toughness 1 means even if they have a little 1/1 Thopter or something, doesn't matter because you're going to be swinging in for a lot. I feel like Maha is one of the big bads of this year that was immediately printed and everyone went, yeah, I don't want to play against that, and they're completely understandable.
Yeah, it feels a little bit Toxrill-esque where, you throw a Curse of Death's Hold on somebody and now they just can't play creatures because they'll all automatically die. Got to keep Maha off the field or else you're just going to have a bad time. I think that's just what the card does. Maha isn't the most fun card, but it never sought out to be. So it's not like Maha was a failure. Maha's like, I'm going to make you regret ever sitting down here. You fool for summoning me. Like, you're dead. And I think it does that very well.
Yeah, but Knights of Souls Betrayal and Karavak definitely went up in price because of this, because people like to mess with their opponents. And if you want any of these cards, you can actually go to Card Kingdom and buy them right from there.
Yeah, you can mess with your opponents by getting cards at a reasonable price and a reasonable speed. Number 6, it's Zamone Mystery Unraveler. I was very surprised because I didn't think anything about this card one way or another, and we haven't played against it much. It's 2 blue-green for a 3/3 landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, if it's the first time for the turn, you manifest Dread, and then otherwise, if any other lands enter after the first one, you can turn a permanent you control face up. We were sleeping. I don't know. We just haven't played against this. Maybe we dodged it, but apparently this commander seems to take very long turns, and it has very explosive potential with even just a fetch land.
I mean, I completely see it when you think about it. It's like, oh, you can play a couple additional lands this turn. Well, I'll play a bounce land. I'll bring it back, and then I'll play that fetch as the second land, and then I'll crack it. I think you can get a ton of lands from this, and then you're able to just flip things over one after another. Keep your fetches. Make sure that you manifest, a bunch on other people's turns so you get 1/1/1, even if you're not building your deck around that manifest. And then just if you can bounce things back and forth, being able to get all of that stuff for free, that's a lot of value.
And we did see the infinite combo even in this precon with Zamone plus Steve plus Eudora, so I'm sure a bunch of people ported that over, kept it when they upgraded the deck, because why wouldn't you? And then that just gets stronger and just cranked up even further because now the cards around it are better. Okay, Zamone, I'm going to be on the lookout for this one, and I'm going to maybe take Zamone off the battlefield. Did you know, by the way, this is the 5th Zamone? Why are there 5 Zamones? I don't understand.
I understand some of them, like, they had to introduce her, right? They did this one, which is whatever. She was in the house, right? And then there's the team up. I can't name the other 2, though. Can you?
There is the other house where we have the main set House of Horrors and the precon House of Horrors.
Okay, so she was also in the house.
The team up, the original, and the kind of random Foundations card where she's just a mythic.
I don't even know why I never registered.
You don't
remember
Zamone?
In Foundations, no, because I think it wasn't worth that much.
But yeah, treat this like your PSA. Zamone seems kind of strong. What is our number 5?
Our number 5 is Storm, Force of Nature. This is from the Marvel drop. 1 red, blue, green for a 3/4 with flying and vigilance. Whenever Storm deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery you cast this turn has Storm. Very fitting, but I think that this can get very spicy very fast. I mean, it doesn't hurt because the actual Secret Lair had something that destroyed people's lands. People like land destruction, but in tiny amounts.
Yeah, there's actually, this card has a lot of different things things contributing to why people hate it. And I think they're all valid. So that helps, crank Storm in the middle of this list. I think the way that the Marvel Secret Lair drop went down for a lot of people was very frustrating. And this package of, that Secret Lair did actively encourage you to play land destruction. I think it was called Ice Storm, and it's just 2 and a green, destroy a land. So people were going to play that in the Storm deck because it has Storm art, and they got it at the same time they got Storm. So that's probably running around. There's definitely that stuff happening in the background. But this card, just at face value, super high potential. Amber loves Storm, so she had to join us. But Amber, most people don't like Storm, it seems. She definitely pairs very well with any number of Frantic Search, Snap, even Pirates Pillage or Big Score that just discard 2 to draw 2 and then make treasure tokens. And now with any of those cards, you're just basically casting 10 spells for free, saving up your mana. There are weird scenarios where you give Storm double strike and then things just start happening like crazy. Do you have any cards that you think would be super awesome with Storm?
I'm not really sure. I was thinking about brewing it at one point, and I think the taste of land destruction is kind of funny, but if I did want to make it a little bit nicer, maybe I would try to do something along the lines of big damage, put a little bit of mana into Crackle with Power or something, and then just make it 1, 2, 10 times, something like that.
Just play Crackle with Power X2. And then just copy it 4 times. I mean, that's gonna KO people real quick.
Yeah, maybe extra combats or something. I think there are a lot of options you can do that aren't just the typical things that you might find on EDH Rec or something.
All right, yes. Our next one, I feel like every year's got to have a mill entry because for whatever reason, players hate mill. Maybe we'll make a video about how mill is actually not that bad and is good for you in small doses. But today's entry, number 4 on our list, the Wise Mothman. 1 and a bug, very fitting, for a 3/3 flyer. Whenever the Wise Mothman enters or attacks, each player gets a rad counter. We'll refresh you on rad counters. During your upkeep, you mill X, where X is the number of rad counters you have. For each non-land milled this way, you lose 1 life and remove a rad counter. So if you have 3 rad counters, go to your upkeep and you mill 3 lands, you keep all 3 rad counters until you eventually mill non-lands and lose a life. Also, whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way.
I think this is pretty interesting that people don't like this, and it's for a variation of reasons. One, because rad counters are kind of hard to track. Everyone has to track them for themselves, at least. Another one being because this does not require you to build around rads. You could just make this into a straight-up mill deck, and people just happen to get rad counters when he enters or attacks. And third, because he gets gigantic, and he's a gigantic flyer that if you're building him mill or rad or whatever, he'll be getting all these 1/1 counters on him. He'll be flying, so he has evasion, and then he could swing in for 1 or 2 hits and then hit you and kill you with combat damage. He comes down pretty cheaply too at 4 mana, and being able to get that mill immediately because he has the payoff stapled to the enabler is just kind of an all-in-one package. I have played against this a few times, and I don't think it's the worst commander out there, but bare minimum, I would say it is the most annoying commander to play against out of the Fallout commanders because it's just so much value.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell me that when someone says you get 2 rad counters in the middle of a game, you don't have to go, okay, what am I supposed to do? I don't have space in my head for that. I have space for a lot of things, a lot of cards, a lot of abilities. Rad counters is not one of them. It's just it's only on, 15 cards or whatever. So Wise Mothman, you got a little bit too much accounting for people, it would seem. And mill equals bad. Mill, don't play mill. You can play mill.
I mean, it's just really big, I feel like there's a small window of time for the Wise Mothman to be able to get you while you're still you still have the removal in hand. But if you let it grow for 2 turns or something, they can kill you. I mean, it doesn't even say whenever 1 or more non-land cards are milled for your opponents. It's just whoever mills them. So you can just mill yourself a bunch. Perpetual Time Beast and stuff, get a bunch of non-land cards into your graveyard and then make him gigantic and swing in. You could even do that turn of if you have a bunch of free ways to mill.
There's a couple different ways to go with the Mothman. I think one of the better ways is to use Altar of the Brood, so that you're constantly triggering his ability for 1 or 2 over and over and over, so that you can keep putting 1 on the Mothman, because you can only ever put 1 counter per creature. So you kind of want a bunch of small ones to keep stacking on the Mothman over and over. But you can also go the route of mill half your deck, and then I can put 1 counter on 30 creatures. Maybe that's a way to overrun. I feel like the former is a little scarier.
He's going to get real big, real fast, though, and he's going to be swinging for damage faster than you'd really think. Along with the fact that if you tutor anything to the top, it's going to be put into your graveyard immediately.
Oh my god, he swings for commander damage faster than Mox Field helps you improve your decks, which is pretty fast. If you actually go to Mox Field right now and you start building a Wise Mothman deck, the user interface is going to be so smooth, so crystal clear to you what is happening. Lets you customize your deck so easily and so cleanly that by the time this video is even over, you will have already built the deck.
Moxfield is the best place online because if you want to have the Wise Mothman pre-con list, you can import that from Wizards of the Coast's profile and then switch out all of the cards that you switched out and make it so it's exactly your deck and you don't have to punch in all 100 cards.
Moxfield users are saying, Beezy, stop talking. I've already built my Moxfield deck. I know how fast it is. So if you're not one of those people, you better get over to the website as soon as this video is over. We're going to go to our podium of shame today. We've got number 3, the bronze medal of Stella Lee Wildcard. 1 blue red for a 2/4. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you can play that card. Tap, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose 2 targets for the copy. Activate only if you've cast 3 or more spells this turn. If you haven't played against or with this card, it is kind of broken. There's no stopgap on this card to prevent it from going infinite. So if you've cast 2 spells, that's not a lot of spells, and your third spell is an instant or sorcery that can untap Stella Lee, you've gone infinite, and you've done it. And you get infinite copies, infinite Magecraft, and there's plenty of ways to take advantage of that. Most of the cards that untap creatures say draw cards, so you've drawn your entire deck. So this is absolutely one of the scariest 2 or 3 card combo cards I've ever seen, let alone from this year.
The fact that it came in a pre-con too is the most surprising part because I feel like pre-cons are at a certain power level and they went, you know what? I think we should just really staple one of the most powerful commanders I'd say ever printed into a pre-con that just happened to come out in the Yeehaw Rootin' Tootin' Cowboy set.
And funnily enough, there are pre-cons that have come out, as we talked about, that have infinites, but this was not one of them. They figured out the refocus combo with this thing, but you can upgrade this deck for 5 cents and turn it into like a really, really annoying powerhouse. So Stella Lee's got all the bases covered. People have had to play against this in the pre-con metas where she is still very, very strong and annoying. People are playing this in the highest power possible where she's going infinite on turn 3. And then people are playing this in somewhere in the middle where you go, oh, they cast a Gitaxian Probe, then their next spell gives them an Impulse Draw, which fuels Stella Lee. And if I don't get her off the board, whether I'm getting comboed or not, I'm going to die. Like, people realize this stuff real quick. I think Stella Lee is a great contender. It's one I've played against. Valid for most hated.
It's so interesting, too, because it just says second spell each turn. And, only 3 or more spells. It's not even like instant and sorcery and stuff. It just, because that's how you're usually building this. But it would bring a little bit more restriction. It couldn't just be like, oh, I'll go like, Soul Ring and whatever, and then Git Probe, and then, ooh, well, I could do this as many times as I want because that's my third spell. That's so not limiting. And I think that makes this card incredibly interesting and powerful.
Yeah, Stella Lee, what a home run of a card. I mean, just fantastic. Definitely deserves her hate. She is a strong Magic card. That brings us to number 2. It's time for the silver medal. And now let me be clear. I think numbers 10 through 4 were all pretty close in terms of how much they were hated. I think we did order them as we saw different values of hatred for them. Number 3, Stella Lee, that was pretty clear. Number 2 is even more clear than that, and it's Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Remember this one? You might not have, because other things happened this year. It is 2 white, red, green for a 5/5. It has Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3. And whenever Voja, Jaws of the Conclave attacks, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then you draw a card for each wolf you control. Voja is itself a wolf, so that will always draw you 1 card, and it just kind of says, play Naya Elf Ball, throw a few Masked Vandal, Changeling type stuff in there, and you get more cards. And it's kind of like a really strong overrun in the command zone. People hate this card. Oh my god. I can't say a lot of that hatred, Amber, you're such a weirdo, was shared by you and I, but there's no denying that people could not get this thing off the field, and when it attacked, it often just killed people.
I feel like building this is just like a 1, 2, 3, step by step, ramp in Naya. Well, you're probably going to be ramping with mana dorks, so probably elves if I had to guess. So that already gets like one part off, and it's like, oh, make sure Voja comes out as quickly as possible. Okay.
With my elves?
Well, I already have elves on the field, and it's like swing and profit question mark.
Well, I have a lot of elves.
And I have some card draw now. That'll be really cool. And then it also has vigilance and trample and ward 3. This thing has everything built into it. I feel like it could be easy being like, oh no, 5-mana commander. But this is a very easy one to get in because you're in that Naya suite of colors, and it just buffs itself immediately.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from people hating this card. I don't have as much of a visceral reaction to this, but I think it is true that Ward 3 on this card is just too much. Like, there's definitely a difference. As you scale up through wards, it gets harder and harder. Ward 4 really does feel basically like hexproof we've seen from Kappa Cannoneer, and this is a step down, and it's closer to 4 than it is 2. 2 feels payable, but 3, when you're in the early game and this thing gets played on turn 3 or 4, it's just like... It definitely closes the door on a lot of removal, and that does lead to people getting smacked for 20 and not feeling so great about it. I can totally get that.
People are awful at paying their taxes. I mean, think about how many triggers slip by when it's like, oh, do you want to pay 2 for that Smothering Tithe? Do you want to pay 1 for that Rhystic's Tithe? And that's not even as much as just, do you want to pay 3 to kill this, or we could just wait for a board wipe or something? I feel like it's just, people are not going to be paying that for the most part, and they're just going to be trying to throw a bunch of stuff, or maybe trying to hit all of the little elves instead so it doesn't get that big. But it's already going to get that big because it's counters and not just a temporary buff. I feel like this could have been fair if it was a temporary buff. It was like, this creature gets +X until end of turn, and then it didn't have the War of 3. I think it would be a lot less hated than this version is right now.
Honestly, that's a good point too, because they are counters. It's not a temporary buff. So what Voja does is prevents you from killing it that crucial turn. So it gets an attack off, and that might be for 4+1/+1 counters. Now you can kill it. Now you have enough mana, but it's like too late. So it's kind of board wipe or nothing. And I think that really takes this card to the next level. And I would say there is an argument that Voja is in fact the #1 most hated commander. But we are about to talk about the actual #1 most hated commander, except I am going to have to set this one out for legal reasons. We'll get into the next one right now. I can also pretty much bet my YouTube career that it will not be banned in the next 6 months. So
our next one is Nadu, Winged Wisdom. This is a very hated commander and our most requested commander this time around.
Absolutely. This was banned 2 months into it actually being released. That's how much everyone hated it. This is 1 blue-green for a 3/4 with flying. Creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Only feels like a slap in the face, doesn't it?
It really does. And what a strange design. It makes for some really clunky board states. Because it only triggers twice each turn for each creature you have to start tracking your board state as creatures that have been hit once, creatures that have triggered twice, and then creatures that are fresh and haven't had the trigger at all. So it just makes it for these clunky, messy board states.
Absolutely. We saw that in Modern when there was the 0, 1, and 2 piles just to see what was triggered and what was not.
And add to that you're usually using this with a combo that has Scoot Swarm or Nantuko Springheart that's making tokens. So you're creating new tokens, putting them in those stacks, comboing with Shuko or Lightning Greaves or something like that. It's just a really hard design and confirmed a bad design by the R&D team.
Honestly, we have the original definition right here, Sam.
Yeah, this is the original design for Nadu. That's still the same cursed mana cost, 1, a blue, and a green for a 3/4 flyer. This is a new piece of text. You could cast permanent spells as though they had flash. And that was deemed a little bit too powerful. And then the second half was whenever a permanent becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. So it still has the same Nadu text, but it's not limited to twice a turn. It's all of your permanents, but a really critical part is that it's only defensive. And that just didn't seem to be enough once you take that flash off. So the design was changed at the last minute. A couple things were forgotten about: Shuko, Lightning Greaves, Ashaya combos, things like that.
Honestly, this seems completely fine. I would play this over OG like Nadu any single day. Have you played against OG Nadu?
I have. And I think one of the hardest parts about it is board states aside, it's the non-deterministic combos. It's the fact that they really manually need to step through these combos with your Shuko or with your Lightning Greaves, and you're looking at the top card, putting it out, putting it into your hand, and it's just these 20-minute turns that sometimes win and sometimes don't win, and you just have to watch someone play and then they pass to you, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, I remember playing against it. It's like, what about now? Are you done now?
Yeah.
What about after that? And then every single time that I've seen Nadu hit the field, it's been an immediate arch enemy situation.
Oh, yeah.
BZ and I have been playing on our higher power decks, and then I was like, well, we have to kill this, but then you get a trigger, and then that doesn't feel good, but we're still
Exactly.
going to have to, and we have to team up all of our removal spells. That feels awful.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good to push someone out of a game, but you kind of have to, or else they're going to take over the game. So it's bad feels on both sides.
Yeah.
Nadu pilots don't like it, and people playing against Nadu don't like it.
Yeah, I feel like if it were just in the 99 as a value piece, it would still be kind of spicy.
Yeah.
But, if we're bringing back Band as Commander or whatever, not that I think that we should ever be doing that.
Yeah.
But as a 99 piece, I think it would be okay. But as Commander, having that on demand in your command zone at any given point, that's just too powerful. So
Yeah.
the RC said, not BZ.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just incredibly powerful. It's usually coming down on turn 2 in a higher power deck. And even in the 99, there's some really spicy lists out there, like Derevi that was running this, and CDH and things like that. So it's a very abusable card. Thankfully, there are some combos that aren't deterministic, or that aren't non-deterministic, like Ashaya combos with Querying Ranger and things like that. When that stuff happened, it wasn't as bad to play through it because it was sort of make infinite mana, pick up your deck. Okay, we can just kind of walk through it verbally instead of doing each individual trigger. So there are some cool ways to play Nadu, but not anymore. Now there's no ways to play Nadu.
I feel like with this, it shook up casual completely because it was like the boogeyman at a certain point.
yeah.
But I know it also shook up CEDH a bit. How did that feel with like Kinnan in the format and then this coming around and then just all of these combos running around?
It was interesting in CDH because the pilots took it upon themselves to execute the deck very efficiently. So when it came to those non-deterministic combos and the messy board states, it wasn't as bad. And we were kind of getting to this point where it was still very powerful, but it was becoming more of a known quantity. And then, it got banned. And I think the meta was adjusting to it, but now that it's gone, it's just kind of gone. So
Yeah. Was the salt as high in CEDH as it was in casual, though?
Definitely not, because in casual, you're basically running the same combos, and those combos are just so hard to interact with. In CDH, you just have such a high interaction package indexed normally that, yeah, you have to focus the Nadu player a little bit, but not as much as you have to in casual.
Yeah. Are you glad it's gone?
Personally, I'm glad because I think it takes up a lot of game time. And again, it's one of those cards that in a casual pod, it's going to give everyone feel bads because you need to target down the Nadu player and you have to struggle to play against it. In CDH, I think it's good because when it comes to tournament play, it ate up a lot of time.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm very happy it's gone in casual also. I think there were just a lot of feel bad play patterns, and then with the amount of time, you're usually looking for like 45 minutes to an hour. An hour is long, honestly, especially for a high powered game. And then you're sitting there like, okay, 1 trigger, 2 trigger, 0 trigger, another permanent, another 1, 2.
Exactly.
And then you just have all these piles of cards. Like 100 cards is a lot to go through.
Yeah, and just the board states were crazy. So, I mean, I'm glad it's gone. I do wish we had the original design, though, because it seems really spicy. I would love to give my permanent spells flash, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah, I might have to try that out in like off camera or something. But if you want to see any more of our 2024 wrap-up videos, we actually ranked every single pre-con of the year, and you can find it right about here.